All right, we are live. You may begin whenever you're ready.
In 3, 2, 1. Good evening. This is the March 13th special meeting of the Board of Directors. This meeting is called for the purpose of disclosing or announcing the results of the referendum to revoke the covenant provision requiring certain clusters in Reston to use the RELAC system or a system like RELAC. The ballots were sent out to 343 members. The referendum did not pass. 165 members voted in favor of revoking the covenant. In order for the resolution to pass, it required 229. So the referendum, the referendum has failed. 89 people voted against repealing or revoking that provision of the covenants. Yeah, I understand that we had a member who wishes to speak to the matter, and I don't know if that person has signed up or is here.
I do not see her on the meeting just yet.
This bill therefore forces TikTok to break up with the Chinese Communist Party. This is not an attempt to ban TikTok.
Is there any other member who wishes to speak to the board this evening?
A winner. The FBI, the top intelligence.
Oh, I see her on. Izzy Santa is on right now. I'm going to ask her to unmute.
Hi, everybody. I'm Izzy Santa. I live at 1932 Barton Hill Road. As some of you know, I'm running for a position at large, and I just wanted to bring a couple of voting insights that I've learned about since I've been door knocking and talking to folks. I've noticed that some of our residents haven't spotted the RA voting email containing the crucial voting link. To clear up any confusion, there's been a bit of curiosity from the folks that I speak to about which email addresses are being used from the household to receive the messages. So I'm here to keep you in the loop of what I'm hearing on the ground, as quite a few members have shared helpful suggestions with me, which I'm now passing on to you. They've recommended that we send out a clear communication detailing as to who in the household is receiving the email. Also, it is welcomed by RA members that I've spoken to that the possibility of consider dispatching another email blast that includes the voting link with the embedded credentials for easy access. Although I know we can find the link on the RA website, you need then the paper ballot to have the login information so that you can vote. And if you haven't signed up for the hard copy, then it just becomes kind of messy. So I just want to bring these points to your attention to just ensure and let people know that it's very easy to engage and vote and participate in this election. And that's all I had to share with you tonight.
John, it may be productive.
Let me, yeah, I wanted to do that because the only purpose of this meeting is to announce the results of the election. So let me do that again. The balloting in the referendum. 343 ballots were sent out. In order for the referendum to pass, 229 members who received a ballot had to vote in favor of revocation of the covenants. That did not happen. 165 members voted in favor of revoking the provisions of the covenant. 89 members voted against it. Obviously, a substantial number of people didn't vote. And so the referendum has failed. And I think that's the only matter on the agenda for this evening. And there being no further business before the board this evening, I think we can adjourn the meeting and thank.
John, you have a member's hand up. JKC.
Go ahead. JKC, you wanted to be heard? You have 3 minutes.
I just haven't figured out how to put my hand down. I'm the one who just wanted you to repeat the vote totals, which you've done, and that's fine, and sorry.
It's quite all right.
I think I put my hand down now.
Yes, you have. Thank you for that. With there being no further business before,
You
Ms.
have another one.
Foster has raised her hand. Ms. Foster, you have your hand raised?
Yes, hi, this is Max Goodman. I'm the husband of Anna Foster. So I would like some clarification because RELAC as it stands right now is in very poor shape. You're probably aware that only 1 out of the 4 chillers is actually operational. And on top of that, they don't actually have the funds required to do the required maintenance and repairs. So for those of us that wanted to get off the RELAC system, you're telling us we have to stick with RELAC, even though it's in terrible condition. And the effort to, revive RELAC might fail in the next couple of months. So I'm curious to hear what the board from Reston, how you would respond to that. What do you recommend that we do?
I would recommend, sir, that you contact RELAC and pose all of those questions to them.
No, I already have.
I'm sorry, sir, if I can finish. RA does not own RELAC. We don't regulate RELAC. We have no import. We don't fund RELAC. So it's impossible for Reston Association to answer any of those questions because.
But are you aware it's not in a currently operational state? Are you aware of that?
I am not aware of that.
How is that
I beg your pardon. If I could finish, you asked the question, I'd like to finish answering your question, and then I'm happy to have you pose a different question. Our general counsel asked the owner of RELAC, the individual, if they intended to operate beginning this spring. The latest date for them to start operating is May 22nd. They sent us an email. It's posted on the referendum on our board site that they intended to operate. That's everything we know. We know nothing more. And so RA has no control over RELAC. And so any of the questions about RELAC and its operating status needs to be directed to them because we don't know.
RELAC had announced that they had failed, and that's because, again, they're not operational and they don't have any money. But you're telling us we still have to stick with them. That's what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're going to have to wait to see if RELAC operates this year. They have sent us an email saying that they will be operating this year, but it remains to be seen whether or not, in fact, they are operating.
Okay, let's say that they are not able to actually start to provide chilled water services in May. Do we still have to have another vote to revoke the covenant? What happens in that case? Because I think it's possible they're not going to raise the money. They're not going to be able to operate. And do we have to still pass a vote in order to get off of the RELAC system?
The provisions of the covenant, and I'm happy to have our counsel address this, but I'm not really in a position to go into a long exchange on this. But the provisions of the covenant say that if RELAC is operating, the clusters that are connected to RELAC are required to use the RELAC system unless a homeowner gets a medical waiver. So if it's working, and we won't know if it's working until we get to May 22nd. I don't have an answer for that question. Nobody at RA has an answer to that question.
But RELAC doesn't currently exist. We're in a kind of state where they're trying to transfer the ownership. I'm not even sure they're legally authorized to operate by the state commission that regulates them. Are you aware of that?
Those are questions. I have information that's different from what you just said, but those are questions that again need to be directed to RELAC. We're not in it. The only thing we have from RELAC is an exchange of emails between our general counsel and RELAC that says that they intend to operate this year. That's all the information we have.
All right, I'm really, I don't think this is satisfactory, but I guess it is what it is. So,
That's the best we can do. Mr. Beckett, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to unmute. I don't know if this is so much a question or a comment. I know there are a couple of folks on, sounds like, that had the same kind of issue I do. There are several of us that would love to be able to come off of RELAC, but I think for those listening, I think the association's position is it's a really difficult position for some of us. It's a practically impossible position for some of the folks in the condominium building units. And I think the association just needs to be sure that if it's not available, it's really, really not available before they tell us all just go do what you guys need to do. So I understand the position that the board is in, that right now you're being told it is technically, maybe, sort of, hopefully available. And then the moment that you're confident it's not, then maybe you can do without, we can dispense with this vote. But on the off chance that doesn't happen, and the RELAC folks still earnestly want to try to make it work and tell you that they can, and there are those of us who would like to try again to come up with just 64 more votes by maybe making sure everyone is fully aware of what this means and how far down the road the can has been kicked or not, and that we probably will be here, like it or not, within another year or so. If we wanted to try again, how long might that take to try another referendum? What would that process be?
Mr. Beckett, just to clarify a couple of things. The balloting closed last Friday. So this is the end result. There is no more voting to be undertaken as regards this referendum. I can imagine that if members who are subject to the restrictive covenant were to come back to the board and ask the board to run another referendum, that would be a decision made by the board that's in place at the time that request was made. Given these results, it's speculative as to whether or not that board, when that request is made, will vote in favor of it. It's not cheap. It's not extraordinarily expensive, but there is an expense involved. As regards the condominiums, just to be clear, the condominiums are not subject to the covenant. The covenant only applies to the townhouse clusters. So Larka and Vantage Hill are not required to belong to RELAC. The clusters, the townhouse clusters, are required to belong to RELAC. So if Vantage Hill and or Larka, the Lake Ann of Reston condominium, want to go and make other provisions, they're free to do so because the covenant doesn't apply to them.
Understood, John. I appreciate that clarification. I guess I was speaking more along the lines of their realistic alternatives. Those of us with the single family homes, I think, have more realistic short-term alternatives if it were allowed to happen. Those folks have a steeper hill, but I understand that's not your purview to get into what their options are or not. It's, is the covenant here or is it not? And yes, that was what I was asking, was what would be the process of starting the referendum again. And again, I understand, yeah, there's a cost there. We don't want to have monthly referenda. I'm just hoping that maybe our neighbors might have gotten hip to what's going on here. Okay, well, it sounds like we are where we are. So
the board.
John, this is Jennifer.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm wondering if Peter can give the members a highlight if the board were to take up another referendum, if what that process would look like, because I believe there are some time periods involved in the beginning part of the process that are required by our deed.
Sure. Thank you, Director Justick. So Jennifer's right. There are some steps involved. We can't just put another referendum out on the street when we choose to. So there is a period of noticing 2 public hearings. Then 2 public hearings have to be held. Then there's a period of time to collect a vote, and then we announce the results like we're doing tonight. So I think, it's at least 2 months, maybe a little bit longer than that to come back and make this happen again. It is quite an effort for staff. And we can't just put another referendum out, which is what Director Justick was alluding to. So there is a time period involved with putting this out again.
Yeah, we have to have a couple of public hearings and then we would vote to send the ballots out to the 343 people who are subject to the covenant again. Leslie has her hand raised. This was not intended to be a dialogue this evening, but merely an announcement. On the other hand, I do want to let any member who wishes to speak give them that opportunity. Leslie?
Yes, this gets back. So there's another mechanism. I'm Leslie's husband, Andy. You've heard before, and I'm still looking for an answer to the question. If at some point it's clear that as the covenant says, there is no central air conditioning service available to the townhouses that are there, what process would be in place for resident association to say the covenant is no longer applicable? And not requiring a referendum just because the service is not available, and how would it be determined?
We'd have to determine that, in fact, the central air conditioning service wasn't operating. How we would go about that remains to be seen, but that would be something that we would have to investigate and determine. Obviously, if people who are on the system currently were to advise us that they're not receiving the chilled water service, that would prompt us to raise some questions and contact with the operators of RELAC to find out.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. I know that for lots of people, this is an unsatisfactory response, and we don't have all of the answers, and we're not going to have all the answers. The answers are fundamentally with the people who are running RELAC. This board believed that this was everything we could do to try and facilitate a resolution. Unfortunately, those efforts were not successful. The board had encouraged people to vote yes, and the membership who are subject to this covenant have spoken. The vote was 165 to 89, but in order for the covenant to be repealed, 229 people had to vote to repeal the covenant. So it remains in place. With that, there's no further business before the board this evening, and I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming out.